E-500 was released back in 2005. Now, at the time, this cost around $700, which is pretty good actually, but nowadays you can find it used for about $60. So just what do you get with this 17-year-old camera? Well, there's an 8-megapixel 4/3 CCD sensor, an ISO range of 100 to 1600, and a 2.5-inch 215K dot LCD screen. The build quality of the E-500 is pretty plasticky, which is kind of ironic since Olympus usually styles their cameras after old school film cameras, which this is. Only modern Olympuses are styled after old school all-metal 1950s style film cameras, whereas this is styled after an all-plastic 1990s style film camera. Having said that, it does have a metal frame, so it feels pretty sturdy and solid, even though the exterior is just 100% plastic, like all the way around. In terms of autofocus, that too is kind of styled after 90s era film cameras. You basically just got these 3 dots right across the center of the frame, and that's it. Truth be told though, in the years that I've been using this camera, I honestly haven't had any trouble with the autofocus. It's weirdly quick and accurate. Storage media on the E-500 is compact flash, and unlike a lot of older cameras, this doesn't really have trouble with bigger compact flash cards. I've currently been filming this whole video with an 8GB card and sometimes a 16GB card, and I've had no trouble whatsoever. You know, a lot of times with cameras of this era, they only recognize up to about 4GB of storage, but with the Olympus, haven't had any trouble with bigger cards. In terms of shutter speed, the Olympus does up to 1/4000th of a second, and in terms of flash sync speed, you've got up to 1/180th of a second in regular mode, but it does have high-speed sync that goes all the way up to 1/4000th of a second in what Olympus was calling Super FP mode. Either way, pretty impressive for a 17-year-old camera. As far as burst rate goes, you've got up to 2.5 frames per second, up to 4 frames in RAW. However, having said that, you've got 2.5 frames per second basically unlimited in JPEG. So again, it's one of those things that's not great by modern standards, but it is pretty impressive for a 17-year-old camera. As far as the menu system goes, it's old school Olympus, and I mean really, really old school. Aside from how dated it actually looks, it's pretty easy to navigate and everything's really easy to find. You know, I keep trying to find a good way to put this camera into perspective for people who maybe aren't 100 years old like me, or maybe people that are just newer to photography. This camera is kind of strange by modern standards, but it's a good kind of strange. You know, it's a 4/3 camera with a totally different lens mount from modern micro 4/3 cameras. It's not mirrorless. It's literally a DSLR. You know, if you take off the lens, you won't see the sensor. Instead, the first thing you see is the mirror. And on top of all of that, in a time period when all modern cameras are using CMOS sensors, and the majority of those sensors are made by Sony, this is actually using a CCD sensor made by Kodak, which is arguably one of the best features of this camera. See, in modern times when people have gotten so film crazy and everyone's just trying to emulate that whole look of film, these old CCD sensors just kind of have that look naturally. So that kind of begs the question, is the E-500 still worth it in 2022? And the answer for me is, yeah, definitely. You know, you've got really good image quality, you've got surprisingly good autofocus, and I don't know, it's just sort of a quirky camera that you don't really find cameras like this nowadays. You know, from the fact that it's an Olympus DSLR to that 4/3 Kodak CCD sensor, I don't know, man, the E-500 just has character that you don't really find in modern cameras. Anyway, I think that's all I've got for today, guys. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again next time.